Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Emily, or Alternative AMP, and today is actually going to be a really short one. One of the things I wanted to talk about is Pokemon, and Pokemon. One of the things I want to talk about is what to do with your extra Pokemon. So I have my game open in front of me, and you can't see it because my screen is glowing. But I am looking. I have about I counted like 20 Weedles that I have, plus 2 Kakunas and 3 Beedrills, and it's just kind of intense. And, you know, you're sitting there thinking, A, Emily, why did you catch so many Weedle? And B, what are you going to do with them all? Every time you catch a Pokemon, you get a couple things. First of all, you get experience. So even if you've already caught the Pokemon before, you still get 100 experience every time you catch it. I know that doesn't seem like a lot, especially in later levels, but it really does add up. If it's a new Pokemon, you get an additional 500 experience, so it's 600 total. You also get your throw bonus, so if it's nice, you get an additional 10 experience. If it's great, you get an additional 50 experience. You also get a curveball. If you throw the curveball, you get an additional 10 experience. So there's a potential for you to get a lot of experience there. In addition to the experience, every time you catch a Pokemon, you get even with a new Pokemon, it's the same amount that I've seen. If you've seen another number, please correct me, but I have seen in my experience that every time you catch a Pokemon, you get 3 candies of that Pokemon type, and you also get 100 Stardust. And the Stardust I'm going to get into in a little bit. I'm going to tell you more about that, but right now I want to cover the candies. And the candies essentially, so every Pokemon type has a candy, and by Pokemon type, I mean Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Weedle, Pidgey, Rattata, all the basics. Everybody has a type. So let's talk about Weedle, because that's what I have a lot of right now, because they just they chill in my house and in my car, and I have some funny photos about Weedle in my car. So every time you catch a Weedle or a Kakuna or a Beedrill, you're going to get 3 Weedle candy. And I know you're thinking, I caught a Beedrill, why am I getting Weedle candy? Well, it wouldn't make any sense for you to get Beedrill candy because there's not much you can do with it. So this candy is used for a couple purposes. The first one is to evolve your Pokemon. So let's again use the Weedle example. It takes 12 Weedle candies for me to evolve the Weedle into a Kakuna. Once it's a Kakuna, it'll take 50 to evolve into a Beedrill. Now this number is different for various Pokemon. Generally speaking, it's the same for all like common lower tier Pokemon is to be 12, so like Weedle, Caterpie, Pidgey, and then once you hit the second level, so once you hit your Kakuna, your Metapod, or your Pidgeotto, then it's 50 to get to that third state of evolution. So for slightly less common Pokemon, so for example, like one of the first stage Nidorans, either male or female, those both take 25 candies to get to the second level. Let me see, Oddish is 25. So, you know, slightly rarer Pokemon, you know, they're not going to be the same. Pokemon like Spearow, Venonat, Paris, those are all going to take 50. And then super common Pokemon like Rattata and Eevee only take 25. So you get different levels that you have to hit for your evolution, and it shows you like right on the screen. You don't have to find a guide for it. It's literally right there. Just click on the Pokemon, open it up, it'll tell you. So you've got all this candy sitting here, and that's the main thing that it's used for is evolution. So you take your Weedle and you collect, I don't know, like 4 of them, and they get 3 each, and then you have 12 candies, and then boom, you got a Kakuna. So one of the other things too is then you've got all these other Weedle sitting there, and what are you going to do with all these Weedle that you can't evolve because you don't have the candy for? Well, you can click on it, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it says transfer, and when you transfer it, you give it back to Professor Willow, and he gives you a candy of that Pokemon's type. So if you give him a Caterpie, he's going to give you a Caterpie candy. If you give him a Charizard, he's going to give you a Charmander candy, so on and so forth, and those candies can then be applied towards future evolutions. One of the other things you'll see with the Pokemon also is the power-up button, and there's a Stardust cost next to it, and then there's also a candy cost next to it. So, for example, Pokemon who don't have an evolution, like if they're at the highest, say you have a Charizard, or say even you have a Snorlax, for example, because I have a Snorlax. I have 3 Snorlax candies, and I can use my Stardust to power up my Snorlax and get him to a higher combat power, and that's what that Snorlax candy is for, so it's not a waste. You can continue to power up your Pokemon even if it doesn't have an evolution, so the candy's still useful in that regard. And then the other thing is Stardust. So every time, like I said, you catch a Pokemon, you're going to get 100 Stardust. And then the Stardust is used for powering up your Pokemon. So click on like any single one of your Pokemon. Let me pull up this Caterpie. It happens to be at the top of my list. So this Caterpie is a CP 102, and the bar you can see is over almost all the way to the right hand side, which means it's pretty much as evolved as it's going to get. Not evolved, but powered up as it's going to get. So sometimes the bar starts on the left. If you look at like lower CP Pokemon, it starts on the left and then it goes to the right. And every time you power it up, it gains more combat power. And when you power it up, this costs, first of all, it costs a candy. So it'll cost you 1 or 2 candies depending on the combat power it already has. Like this Caterpie is going to cost me 2. If I want to power up a lower level Weedle, that one's only going to cost me 1. Or like, let me look at my Beedrill. That's only going to cost me 1. And it's dependent on, you know, like where the combat power currently is. So there's all sorts of different, you know, effects going in. But the Stardust is the important part, because you can catch a bazillion Weedles and you're like, yeah, let me power up till the cows come home, but you can't because you don't have enough Stardust. Oh no! So that's what the Stardust is for. Just a quick explanation of that and the Pokemon candy. So while it's super important to catch a lot of different varieties of Pokemon because you want to catch them all and fill your Pokedex, it's also important to catch the same type of Pokemon so you can power them up and so you can take over gyms for your faction and be like, look at my baller Raichu, or whatever the case may be. So then you might be sitting there wondering, well, Emily, should I power up my Pokemon first or should I evolve it first? And, you know, I was originally going to say it's a preference-based question, but here's the thing, is every time you evolve your Pokemon, they get a new skill set. Alright, so say, for example, I'm looking at my Pidgey, right? So he's a level, I keep saying level, it's combat power, whatever. So he's a combat power 188 Pidgey, and he has the move Tackle, which is a normal type move, Twister, which is a dragon move. And then I'm looking at my Pidgeotto, which is a 283 Pidgeotto, and he has the moves Wing Attack, which is a flying move, and Twister, which is a dragon move. And then I'm looking at my Pidgeot, and he has the moves Wing Attack, which is a flying move, and Hurricane, which is a flying move. So every time you evolve your Pokemon, the skill set's going to change. So maybe one time your Pidgey has 2 normal moves, or a normal and a flying, and then you evolve it and it has a flying and a flying, and then you evolve it again and it has a flying and a dragon. I mean, I hate to say it's personal preference on like what moveset that you want to use, but you kind of got to look at like the gyms in the area and what's going on. So for example, there's a lot of flying Pokemon in my area and a lot of water Pokemon in my area. So I'd be more likely to keep a Pikachu that has like 2 electric moves than I would a Pikachu that has like 2 normal moves. Even better, of course, is one of each, but you know, nobody asked me. So in that regard, I would say evolve your Pokemon first and then dump the candy and the Stardust into it, and that'll probably, you know, give you the best bet, because only you can see like what's in the area and what's going to be best for you and your team. Because even though gyms do, you know, a lot of times just rely on combat power, it also takes weaknesses and effectiveness into play, so make sure you plan accordingly. Hopefully you found this informative. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Just leave me a comment below or send me an email or however you want to get in touch, and I will see you next time.